The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences floated in the void between three star systems, a massive station that housed the brightest minds from across the galaxy. Its crystalline towers stretched for kilometers in every direction, each one dedicated to a different field of study. From quantum mechanics to xenobiology, from diplomatic relations to advanced warfare theory, every subject that mattered in the galactic community was taught here. Commander Zexathala of the Krillian Defense Force stood at the observation deck, watching new students arrive on transport ships. Her four eyes tracked each vessel with practiced precision, noting the sleek designs of the core worlds, the rugged functionality of rim species, and the elegant curves of the ethereal collective's bioships. Each carried the future leaders, scientists, and warriors of their respective species. "Another promising class," remarked Dean Vorlak, the Academy's headmaster. The ancient Vorthak's tentacles writhed with satisfaction as he watched the ships dock. "We have representatives from 47 species this cycle." Zexthala's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Including humans?" "Just one," Vorlak said, consulting his datapad. "A surprising development considering how new they are to galactic society." The Terran Council was quite insistent about sending their best candidate. The human ship was unremarkable, a simple design that seemed crude compared to the technological marvels around it. From its docking bay emerged a group of various alien students, and among them a single human. Zexathala focused her enhanced vision on the newcomer. The human appeared young by their species standards, with brown hair and average build. Nothing about the human seemed remarkable. No obvious cybernetic enhancements, no visible weapons, no signs of genetic modification. In fact, compared to the other students with their natural armor plating, energy manipulation abilities, and enhanced sensory organs, the human looked almost primitive. Marcus Chen, age 18 Terran years, Vorlak read from his files. Academic scores are adequate. Physical evaluations show baseline human capabilities. No special distinctions noted. Rather underwhelming for such an exclusive institution. Zexthala continued watching as the human struggled with a basic luggage unit that students from other species handled effortlessly. A massive Thurian student, standing nearly 3 meters tall with rock-like skin, offered to help. The human accepted with a smile, engaging in what appeared to be friendly conversation despite the language barrier. Perhaps the Terrans are being optimistic about their species' potential, Zexthala mused. Or testing our admission standards. What neither administrator could see was the careful way Marcus observed everything around him. His seemingly casual glances cataloged security protocols, structural weak points, and the behavioral patterns of different species. While he appeared to struggle with his luggage, he was actually testing the station's artificial gravity, atmospheric pressure, and the response time of nearby security drones. The orientation ceremony took place in the Academy's Grand Amphitheater, a vast space that could accommodate thousands of beings of various sizes and environmental needs. Students from each species clustered together, the aquatic Merdani in their mobile water suits, the crystalline Zelthrons whose bodies hummed with harmonic frequencies, the shape-shifting Morvani who kept fluid forms out of nervousness. Marcus sat alone, which was expected. Humans were new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 20 years ago. Most species viewed them as curious primitives, interesting from an anthropological perspective but not particularly significant. Dean Vorlak addressed the assembly in the universal trade language, his translator device ensuring every species could understand. "Welcome to the Academy. You represent the finest minds and strongest individuals from across known space. Here you will learn not just about science and technology, but about cooperation, understanding, and the responsibilities that come with advanced knowledge." The dean continued with traditional warnings about academic integrity, safety protocols, and the competitive nature of the curriculum. What he didn't mention was the Academy's other purpose, serving as a proving ground for potential threats to galactic stability. Every student was monitored, their capabilities assessed, their loyalties tested. Those who showed dangerous potential were either recruited by the Galactic Defense Council or quietly eliminated. Marcus listened attentively, while simultaneously counting the number of exits, noting the positions of armed guards and identifying which students might pose the greatest threat in a conflict situation. His training had prepared him for this moment, though none of his fellow students could possibly guess what that training had entailed. After the ceremony, students were assigned to dormitory sections based on their species' environmental needs. Marcus found himself in the general humanoid section, sharing common areas with beings who breathed similar atmospheric mixtures and operated under comparable gravity preferences. His roommate was a Krillian named Veltar, whose insectoid features and multiple limbs made him well-suited for the Academy's multidimensional engineering programs. Veltar greeted Marcus with polite curiosity, having never encountered a human before. "Your species uses only 2 locomotor appendages?" Veltar asked, his translated voice carrying genuine puzzlement. "How do you manipulate complex machinery?" Marcus demonstrated basic tool use, which seemed to fascinate the Krillian. "We make do with what we have," he said simply. "Sometimes limitations force you to be more creative." What Veltar couldn't see was the speed and precision with which Marcus unpacked his belongings, each movement economical and purposeful. Every item was placed with careful consideration for quick access, defensive positions, and potential improvised weapons. To a casual observer, it looked like normal settling-in behavior. That first night, Marcus lay in his assigned sleeping area, listening to the subtle sounds of the station. He identified the hum of life support systems, the rhythm of artificial day cycles, the distant vibrations of docking procedures. More importantly, he noted the patterns of security sweeps, the shift changes of guards, and the electromagnetic signatures of various monitoring devices. The Academy's reputation for excellence was well-deserved, but it was built on more than just academic achievement. Hidden within its curriculum were tests designed to identify beings with exceptional potential for both creation and destruction. The greatest minds often walked the finest line between genius and madness, between salvation and annihilation. As Marcus drifted toward sleep, he wondered which of his fellow students would prove to be allies, which would become enemies, and how long he could maintain his carefully constructed facade. The mission was clear: infiltrate, observe, and when the time came, act. The fate of humanity might well depend on how successfully he could hide his true nature among the galaxy's finest minds. None of them suspected that Earth's most dangerous weapon wasn't a gun, a bomb, or a starship. It was an 18-year-old boy who had been trained since childhood to become something that shouldn't exist. The perfect combination of student and soldier, learner and killer. The Academy's first day of classes began before the artificial dawn. Marcus woke naturally at the designated time, his internal clock already adjusted to the station's rhythm. Around him, other students struggled with various forms of alarm, systems designed for their species-specific needs. Veltar emerged from his rest cycle with a series of chittering sounds that Marcus's universal translator couldn't quite interpret. Academic anticipation mixed with digestive discomfort, the Krillian explained when Marcus looked puzzled. "My species experiences emotional states through our metabolic processes." The dining hall was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the dietary needs of dozens of different species. Marcus observed the complex logistics required to serve crystalline beings who absorbed energy directly, aquatic species who required liquid nutrients, and carnivorous hunters who needed fresh protein. The human section offered familiar foods, though Marcus noted they'd been analyzed and modified for optimal nutrition. At breakfast, Marcus was approached by a group of students from various species. Leading them was Arya Solnus, a tall, elegant being from the ethereal collective, whose translucent skin seemed to glow with inner light. Her species was known for their advanced telepathic abilities and philosophical nature. "You're the human," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested curiosity rather than hostility. "We've been wondering about your species' inclusion in the Academy. Your people have such a brief spacefaring history." "Everyone starts somewhere," Marcus replied diplomatically, taking a measured bite of his breakfast. He could sense the others evaluating him, though their methods varied by species. Standing beside Arya was Thok, a Gorvani warrior whose species was famous for their military prowess. His massive frame was covered in natural armor plating, and his forearms ended in claws that could tear through most known materials. "The acceptance trials were rigorous this cycle," Thok rumbled. "Many established species had their candidates rejected. How did a human qualify?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe they needed someone to represent the newer members of the galactic community. Diversity of thought and all that." What the group didn't realize was that Marcus was simultaneously conducting his own evaluation. Arya's telepathic abilities were formidable, but limited to emotion reading rather than thought extraction. Thok's physical capabilities were impressive, but his strategic thinking followed predictable patterns. The others in the group represented various specializations: technology, biology, energy manipulation, but none posed an immediate threat. The first class was theoretical xenobiology, taught by Professor Murthok, whose species had evolved from deep-sea creatures and whose understanding of life in extreme environments was unmatched in the galaxy. The classroom itself was a sensory experience, with atmospheric controls that could replicate any known environment within minutes. Today, we will examine the fundamental differences in how various species approach problem-solving, Professor Murthok announced, his tentacled form floating in a specialized mobility tank. I want each of you to propose a solution to a hypothetical scenario. The professor projected a three-dimensional display showing a dying planet. A world's ecosystem is collapsing due to atmospheric contamination. You have 6 standard time units to design an intervention. The native population must survive, but resources are limited. Students immediately began working, their approaches reflecting their species' natural strengths. The Ethereals proposed harmony-based solutions involving energy redistribution. The Gorvani suggested aggressive terraforming. The technical species began calculating atmospheric processors and environmental filters. Marcus appeared to struggle with the assignment, asking basic questions about atmospheric composition and native biology. His queries seemed naive, almost primitive compared to the sophisticated analyses his classmates were developing. Professor Murthok noted the human's apparent limitations with disappointment. However, Marcus's questions were carefully designed to gather information while appearing incompetent. Each seemingly innocent inquiry revealed crucial details about the scenario that others had overlooked. While his classmates focused on grand solutions, Marcus was mapping resource distribution, population patterns, and potential infrastructure weaknesses. When presentation time came, most students offered complex technological solutions requiring massive resource expenditure and sophisticated equipment. Marcus stood last, his proposal seeming almost embarrassingly simple. Instead of fighting the contamination directly, he said, you work with it. Introduce modified organisms that can process the contaminants as food, turning them into beneficial compounds. Use the native population's existing agricultural knowledge to spread these organisms through their established distribution networks. The solution becomes self-sustaining and doesn't require ongoing technological support. The classroom fell silent. Professor Murthok's tentacles writhed in surprise. Your approach, it's remarkably elegant. You've identified the most sustainable solution with the least resource expenditure. Arya looked at Marcus with new interest. We all thought in terms of imposing external solutions. You worked within existing systems. Sometimes the best technology is no technology at all, Marcus replied modestly. My species has experience with environmental adaptation. After class, as students dispersed to their next subjects, Marcus noticed he was being followed. The tale was professional but not perfect, a security operative from one of the Academy's monitoring divisions. Marcus allowed the surveillance to continue while mentally cataloging his observer's capabilities and equipment. His next class was strategic analysis, taught by Commander Zexathala herself. The Krillian military officer had a reputation for pushing students beyond their comfort zones, and her classroom resembled a war room more than a traditional academic space. Strategy is not about strength, she began, her 4 eyes scanning the assembled students. It's about understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves. Today we'll conduct a simple exercise. The room reconfigured itself into a 3-dimensional battlefield. Students were divided into 2 teams and given control of virtual military units representing different species forces. Marcus found himself on a team with several physically impressive but strategically inexperienced beings. The opposing team was led by Thok, whose people had been warriors for millennia. They organized their forces according to proven Gorvani military doctrine, establishing strong defensive positions and preparing for methodical advancement. Marcus's team seemed doomed to failure. Their leader was a Zelthron whose species approached conflict through consensus building rather than decisive action. Their forces were scattered and poorly coordinated. "We should attack their strongest position directly," suggested one teammate, a Thurian whose species valued honor in combat above tactical advantage. Marcus shook his head. "That's what they expect. Look at how they've positioned their forces." He gestured to the display. "They're defending against a conventional assault, but they've left their supply lines exposed." Working quietly, Marcus began coordinating unconventional tactics. Instead of direct confrontation, he had his teammates identify and exploit weaknesses in the enemy's organizational structure. Rather than matching strength against strength, he turned the enemy's advantages into liabilities. The result was swift and decisive. Thok's seemingly impregnable force collapsed, not through heroic battles, but through systematic disruption of their command, structure, and resource network. Commander Zexthala's mandibles clicked approvingly. Excellent demonstration of asymmetric warfare principles. The human student showed particular insight into exploiting organizational vulnerabilities. After class, Thok approached Marcus directly. "Your tactical thinking is unusual for a human. Most descriptions of your species emphasize emotional decision-making and individual heroics." "Maybe those descriptions are incomplete," Marcus replied carefully. That night, alone in his dormitory, Marcus activated a small, carefully concealed device and established a brief, encrypted communication with Earth. His message was simple. Integration proceeding as planned. Cover identity holding. No immediate threats detected. The response came back equally brief. Understood. Remember your primary objective. The galaxy is watching. Marcus deleted all traces of the communication and settled in for sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to gather intelligence. The academy was indeed a place of learning, but what he was learning went far beyond what any curriculum could teach. 3 weeks into the semester, Marcus had established himself as a competent but unremarkable student. His grades were good but not exceptional. His social interactions friendly but superficial. To most observers, he was exactly what he appeared to be. A young human trying to prove his species belonged among the galaxy's elite. The illusion shattered during advanced physics class. Professor Kethvar, a crystalline being whose species could manipulate electromagnetic fields naturally, was demonstrating quantum field theory using direct molecular manipulation. The lesson required students to observe subatomic particle behavior in real time, a task that demanded enhanced sensory capabilities most species possessed naturally. Human Chen, Professor Kethavar's crystalline form rang with harmonic confusion. Your species lacks the necessary sensory organs to perceive quantum fluctuations directly. Perhaps you should observe through the enhancement devices. Marcus looked at the offered technological aids, sophisticated instruments that would allow him to indirectly observe what others could see naturally. Around him, classmates watched with various expressions of sympathy or smugness. This was the moment his limitations would be exposed. "Actually, Professor, I think I can manage without them," Marcus said quietly. Before anyone could object, Marcus began describing the particle movements in precise detail. Not just the basic patterns visible through instruments, but quantum probability variations, field strength fluctuations, and molecular resonance frequencies that even the enhancement devices couldn't detect. The classroom fell silent. Professor Kethvar's harmonic frequency shifted to astonishment. That's impossible. Your species doesn't possess quantum-sensitive neural pathways. Maybe human biology is more adaptable than the records suggest, Marcus replied, maintaining his casual demeanor while internally cursing the slip. He'd been too focused on the fascinating physics demonstration and forgotten his cover identity. After class, Arya approached him with her ethereal grace. But her luminescent skin showed patterns Marcus had learned indicated deep suspicion. "That was remarkable, Marcus. Almost as if you'd been trained to perceive quantum fields." "Lucky genetics, maybe?" Marcus suggested, but he could see she wasn't convinced. The real problem came later that day. Marcus was studying in the Academy's vast library, surrounded by data crystals and holographic texts, when Veltar approached with visible agitation. "I have discovered something concerning," his roommate chittered, his insectoid features twisted with worry. I accessed the student database for a research project and there are inconsistencies in your background file. Marcus looked up from his reading, maintaining a confused expression. Inconsistencies? Your academic records show completion of advanced courses that don't exist at any Terran educational institution. Your medical files indicate genetic markers that aren't present in baseline human populations. Your psychological evaluation contains classified sections I cannot access despite my clearance level. Veltar moved closer, lowering his voice. Marcus, who are you really? Before Marcus could respond, the library's ambient lighting suddenly shifted to emergency red. Throughout the station, alert klaxons began sounding. The Academy's defensive protocols were activating. All students report to designated safety areas immediately, came the announcement from Dean Vorlak. This is not a drill. Security Condition Alpha is now in effect. The library erupted into controlled chaos as students from dozens of species began moving toward emergency shelters. Marcus noted that some students seemed more prepared than others, their movements suggesting military training rather than academic background. Instead of joining the general evacuation, Marcus slipped away from the crowd, using the confusion to access restricted areas of the station. His genetic modifications included enhanced stealth capabilities that allowed him to move virtually, undetected through sensor networks. What he found in the Academy's secure sections confirmed suspicions he'd been developing. Hidden beneath the academic facade were extensive military research facilities, weapons development labs, and most disturbing of all, detention cells containing beings who were clearly not voluntary residents. In one laboratory, Marcus discovered the truth about the Academy's selection process. The brightest minds from across the galaxy weren't just being educated, they were being studied, cataloged, and in some cases experimented upon. The Academy was a front for the Galactic Defense Council's most classified research programs. Fascinating, isn't it? A voice said behind him. Marcus turned to find Commander Zexthala approaching, but she wasn't alone. Flanking her were two beings he hadn't seen before, heavily augmented soldiers whose species he couldn't identify. The Academy has always served a dual purpose, the commander continued, her four eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory intensity. Education for those who prove useful, elimination for those who prove dangerous. I'm just a student, Marcus protested, though he was already calculating distances, weapons availability, and escape routes. No, Zexthala said firmly. You're something much more interesting. Your quantum perception isn't natural human ability. Your tactical insights exceed anything your species should possess. Your background files contain enough classified markers to suggest extensive military conditioning. The commander gestured to her companions, who began advancing. The question is, are you a spy, an assassin, or something entirely new? We're going to find out. Marcus realized his cover was blown, but more importantly, he'd stumbled into something much larger than his original mission. The Academy wasn't just an educational institution. It was a processing center for potential galactic threats, and he'd just been identified as one of them. The emergency alert isn't for external threats, he said, understanding dawning. It's for me. Very good, Zexthala confirmed. Now you can come quietly for interrogation, or we can do this the difficult way. Marcus considered his options. He could maintain his cover and submit to questioning, hoping his conditioning would hold under whatever methods they used. He could attempt escape, but that would confirm their suspicions and endanger his mission. Or he could reveal just enough of his capabilities to negotiate from a position of strength. The decision was made for him when one of the augmented soldiers moved too aggressively forward. Marcus's training kicked in automatically. In a movement too fast for normal eyes to track, he disarmed the soldier and put him down with precise strikes to neural pressure points. The second soldier raised a weapon, but Marcus was already moving. He flowed around the energy discharge like water, closing distance and neutralizing the threat before the being could adjust targeting. Commander Zexthala watched this display with growing amazement. Remarkable. Your species' combat capabilities have been severely underestimated. Marcus stood surrounded by disabled guards, his breathing barely elevated despite the intense physical exertion. My species has hidden depths. Indeed they do, Zexthala agreed. The question now is, are you here to learn our secrets, or are you here to destroy us? The alarm klaxons continued wailing throughout the station, but Marcus realized the real emergency was just beginning. His cover was blown, his mission was compromised, and he was facing an adversary who might be far more dangerous than he'd initially assessed. That depends, Marcus replied carefully, on what exactly you've been doing to those beings in the detention cells. Zexathala's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Now that, human Marcus, is exactly the right question. Commander Zexathala led Marcus deeper into the Academy's hidden levels, past laboratories filled with equipment he didn't recognize and through corridors that shouldn't have existed according to the station's public schematics. The detention area was more disturbing than he'd initially realized. Behind reinforced barriers sat beings from across the galaxy, but these weren't criminals. Marcus recognized the signs of advanced intelligence augmentation in many of them: surgical scars indicating neural implants, the glassy look of those subjected to consciousness expansion procedures, the tremors associated with forced genetic modification. Every class brings us new specimens, Zexathala explained with clinical detachment, students who show exceptional potential in dangerous directions. The Academy identifies them, studies them, and when necessary, contains them. In one cell, Marcus saw a young ethereal whose luminescent skin flickered with unstable energy patterns. In another, a Morvani whose shape-shifting abilities had become so advanced they struggled to maintain any fixed form. A third contained something that might once have been Thurian, but mechanical augmentations had replaced most of its organic mass. What happened to them? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. Enhanced beyond safe limits, Zexathala replied. The ethereal developed the ability to manipulate stellar energy directly. The Morvani achieved perfect mimicry of any organic form, including genetic structure. The Thurian began integrating with technology at a molecular level. She stopped before a cell containing what appeared to be empty space, and this one learned to exist partially outside normal dimensional parameters. Took us 3 cycles to develop containment protocols. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental controls. You're not educating them, you're weaponizing them. In a galaxy filled with potential threats, we study what makes beings dangerous, Zexathala confirmed. Some can be trained and controlled. Others must be contained. A few require more permanent solutions. The implications were staggering. The Academy wasn't just identifying extraordinary individuals. It was conducting experiments on them, pushing their abilities to dangerous extremes, then either recruiting them as weapons or eliminating them as threats. Why are you showing me this? Marcus demanded. Because, human Marcus, you represent something we've never encountered before, Zexathala said. Your species shouldn't be capable of quantum perception, yet you demonstrated it effortlessly. Your combat abilities exceed anything in our databases about human physiology. Your tactical thinking suggests training that your species' military doctrine shouldn't be able to provide. They stopped walking in front of another cell, and Marcus felt his blood freeze. Inside was another human, or what had been human. The being was suspended in some kind of stasis field, its body showing extensive surgical modification. Neural interfaces protruded from its skull, and portions of its skeleton had been replaced with unknown materials. Subject 247, Zexathala read from a data display. Acquired 18 months ago, a human who claimed to be a simple merchant, but our analysis revealed combat conditioning beyond anything we'd seen from your species. We've been studying its augmentation patterns ever since. Marcus stared at the suspended figure, recognizing the facial structure despite the modifications. Agent Reynolds, one of Earth's most experienced operatives. He'd been reported missing during a routine intelligence-gathering mission. You see our dilemma, Zexathala continued. Your species claims to be peaceful newcomers to galactic society, yet we keep encountering humans with impossible capabilities. So we must ask, are you natural anomalies, or is your entire species hiding something significant? Marcus realized his mission had just become far more complex. Earth's secret wasn't just about him. The Academy had been collecting enhanced humans for study, which meant other operations had been compromised. More importantly, they were clearly working toward understanding how to replicate or counter human augmentation techniques. What do you want from me? He asked. Cooperation, Zexathala replied simply. Submit to our research protocols voluntarily, and you'll be treated as a valued subject. Resist and you'll join the others in containment while we study you anyway. Marcus looked around at the imprisoned beings, each one representing the galaxy's fear of exceptional potential. The Academy's true purpose was becoming clear. It was a processing center designed to identify, study, and neutralize any being who might threaten the established galactic order. There is a third option, Zexthala added, her tone suggesting she was offering something significant. Join us willingly. Help us understand your species' true capabilities. Work with the Galactic Defense Council to ensure that human potential is channeled in productive directions. You mean become a weapon for the Council? Marcus translated. Become a guardian of galactic stability, she corrected. Your species is clearly more advanced than they've revealed. We can work together to ensure that advancement benefits everyone, rather than threatening the peace we've built. Marcus considered his options carefully. Escape seemed impossible. The Academy's security was designed to contain beings with abilities far beyond normal parameters. Resistance would likely result in him joining the other test subjects. But cooperation might give him access to information crucial to Earth's defense. I need proof that cooperation leads to actual partnership, not just a more comfortable cell, he said finally. Zexathala's mandibles clicked approvingly. A reasonable request. Follow me. She led him to another section of the hidden complex, this one clearly designed for active operations rather than research. Marcus saw beings he recognized from advanced classes, students who had supposedly been selected for special projects. They were being trained in combat techniques, intelligence gathering, and what appeared to be assassination methods. Those who prove useful and trustworthy join the Academy's operational division, Zexathala explained. They serve as the Council's agents throughout the galaxy, ensuring that potential threats are identified and neutralized before they can destabilize civilized space. Marcus watched Arya, practicing advanced telepathic techniques with equipment designed to amplify her natural abilities. Thok was working with weapons that could enhance his already formidable combat capabilities. Others were engaged in training that clearly exceeded anything offered in regular classes. The finest students become the finest agents, Zexthala continued. They understand that true education involves learning about the galaxy's darker realities and accepting responsibility for maintaining order. But Marcus noticed something else, subtle signs of conditioning and control. Neural monitoring devices were integrated into their training equipment. Their movements showed the mechanical precision of beings whose free will had been systematically eroded. These weren't willing partners, they were sophisticated slaves. How many humans have you processed through this program? Marcus asked. You would be the first to join willingly, Zexathala admitted. The others required more extensive conditioning to overcome their species' natural resistance to authority structures. Marcus felt a cold rage building inside him. Earth had suspected the Academy might have darker purposes, but the reality exceeded their worst fears. The galaxy's finest educational institution was actually a factory for creating controlled weapons from the best and brightest minds of every species. I'll need time to consider your offer, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. Of course, Zexthala agreed, but understand that time is limited. The Council has questions about your species that require answers. We can get those answers through cooperation or through more direct methods. As they walked back toward the Academy's public areas, Marcus began calculating possibilities. His original mission had been intelligence gathering, but the situation demanded immediate action. Hundreds of beings were being held against their will, experimented on or converted into weapons. Among them were humans whose capture threatened Earth's security. The Academy needed to be stopped, but Marcus realized he couldn't do it alone. He would need allies, and finding them among the student body without alerting the Academy's surveillance systems would require careful planning. More importantly, he needed to get word back to Earth about what he'd discovered. The galaxy's most prestigious educational institution was actually humanity's greatest threat, and they had no idea what was coming for them. That night, Marcus lay in his dormitory bed staring at the ceiling while Veltar's breathing created a steady rhythm in the darkness. His mind raced through possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last. Direct confrontation was suicide. The Academy's security could contain beings far more powerful than himself. Escape was nearly impossible given the station's isolation between star systems. But doing nothing meant allowing the torture and enslavement of innocent beings to continue. The solution came from an unexpected source. Veltar's earlier discovery of inconsistencies in Marcus's files had sparked an idea. If the Academy's systems could be compromised from within, Perhaps the truth about their operations could be exposed to the broader galaxy. Marcus waited until Veltar entered his deep sleep cycle, then carefully accessed his concealed equipment. Among the seemingly innocent personal items was a quantum transmitter, designed to piggyback on the Academy's own communication systems. He began composing a message that would change everything. The transmission wasn't directed at Earth. That would take too long and might be intercepted. Instead, Marcus sent his evidence to the Galactic News Consortium, the Interspecies Ethics Council, and most importantly, to the home governments of every species that had students imprisoned in the Academy's hidden levels. The package included detailed scans of the detention facilities, recordings of his conversation with Commander Zexthala, and biometric analysis proving that many prisoners showed signs of forced augmentation and mental conditioning. Most damning of all were the Academy's own research files, which Marcus had managed to copy during his guided tour. By morning, the galaxy would know what the Academy really was, but Marcus couldn't wait for external intervention. Too many beings were suffering, and Zexthala's deadline for his decision was approaching rapidly. He needed to act immediately, which meant finding allies among the students. The next day, Marcus began carefully approaching classmates he'd identified as having both the capability and motivation to resist the Academy's true agenda. His first target was Arya, whose telepathic abilities made her valuable but also dangerous to the Academy's control systems. He found her in the Meditation Gardens, a section of the station designed to accommodate species that required quiet contemplation. Her ethereal form glowed softly in the artificial twilight. Her consciousness extended into higher dimensional spaces as her species practiced regularly. "I need to speak with you about something important," Marcus said quietly, sitting nearby. Arya's luminescence flickered with concern as she returned her awareness to normal space. "You're troubled. I can sense distress patterns in your bioelectric field." Marcus had counted on her empathic abilities to detect his sincerity. "There are things happening in this academy that go beyond education. Dark things that I think you need to know about." He carefully explained what he'd discovered, watching as her ethereal features shifted through expressions of disbelief, horror, and finally, grim determination. Her species' philosophical nature made them particularly opposed to forced enhancement and mental conditioning. "You're certain of this?" she asked, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that suggested deep emotional disturbance. "I've seen the prisoners. I've talked to the commander responsible. Some of those beings have been tortured for research purposes." Arya was quiet for a long moment, her inner light fluctuating as she processed the information. "My telepathic training has shown me glimpses of hidden thoughts from faculty members. I sensed deception but attributed it to normal academic politics." "This explains much. Will you help me?" Marcus asked directly. "What you're describing violates every principle my species holds sacred," Arya replied firmly. "Yes, I will help. But we cannot act alone." Their next recruit was more challenging. Thok's warrior culture valued strength and honor, but also respected authority and military discipline. Convincing him that the Academy's leadership was corrupt required a different approach. Marcus found the Gorvani in the gymnasium, practicing combat forms against holographic opponents. Even by his species' standards, Thok was exceptional. His movements combined deadly precision with raw power that could tear apart most known materials. "I need a warrior's opinion on something," Marcus said, approaching between training sessions. Thok's four eyes focused on him with interest. "Your species rarely seeks advice about combat matters." "This isn't about combat technique," Marcus replied. "It's about honor and protecting the innocent." He showed Thok recordings from the detention level, focusing on the imprisoned beings who were clearly being held against their will. The Gorvani's reaction was immediate and visceral. His natural armor plates shifted color to indicate extreme aggression. "These prisoners were defeated in honorable combat?" Thok demanded. "No," Marcus said carefully. "They were students like us. They were imprisoned for being too intelligent, too capable, or too dangerous to the existing order." Thok's claws extended involuntarily as his warrior instincts responded to the injustice. "Imprisoning the young without trial violates every code of honorable warfare. This is the behavior of cowards who fear strength they cannot control. The Academy's security forces are well equipped and numerous," Marcus warned. "This won't be an easy fight." "The finest battles never are," Thok replied grimly. "When do we strike?" The final member of their core group was the most dangerous to recruit. Crix was a Vorthak like Dean Vorlak, but younger and far more idealistic. His species' natural time perception allowed them to see probability streams and potential futures, making him valuable for strategic planning but also making him nearly impossible to deceive. Marcus approached Crix in the Advanced Temporal Mechanics Laboratory, where the young Vorthak was studying quantum causality chains. His tentacles writhed in complex patterns as he manipulated probability equations that would take other species years to understand. "Your future branches are converging toward conflict," Crix said without looking up from his work. "Multiple probability streams show academy-wide violence within the next few time cycles. Can you see the outcomes?" Marcus asked, relieved that Crix had already detected the coming confrontation. "Uncertain. Too many variables, too many unknowns." Crix's tentacles stilled as he turned toward Marcus. "But I can see the moral weight of the choices being made. The Academy's current path leads to darkness across multiple timeline branches." Crix had clearly been monitoring the probability streams and had reached his own conclusions about the Academy's true nature. "What you're planning is dangerous, but inaction leads to worse outcomes across 73.4% of observable future paths." "Then you'll help us?" "I will optimize your chances of success," Crix agreed. "Though I should warn you that the probability streams show high potential for casualties, regardless of tactical approach." With their core team assembled, Marcus began planning the operation. Arya's telepathic abilities would allow them to coordinate without using communication systems the Academy could monitor. Thok's combat skills would handle physical opposition. Crix's temporal perception would guide their timing and strategic decisions. Marcus would provide overall coordination and handle technical aspects. The plan was complex but necessary. They would need to simultaneously disable the Academy's communication systems, liberate the imprisoned beings, expose the truth to the galaxy, and escape before overwhelming security forces could respond. Most challenging of all, they would need to do all this while the Academy was on high alert, following the recent security breach. As Marcus lay in his dormitory that final night, he reflected on how far he'd come from his original mission. He'd been sent to gather intelligence about galactic society and assess potential threats to Earth. Instead, he'd discovered a threat to every species in the galaxy and found himself leading a desperate mission to expose it. Tomorrow would determine not just the fate of the Academy's prisoners, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community. Success would reveal Earth's hidden capabilities but might also prevent a much greater evil from continuing. Failure would likely mean death or worse for everyone involved. Marcus closed his eyes and began the final mental preparations his training had taught him. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of when defending the innocent against those who would abuse power. The Academy's finest student was about to become its deadliest enemy. The operation began at 0300 hours, during the Academy's quiet cycle when most biological species required rest. Marcus moved through the darkened corridors like a shadow, his enhanced senses mapping the patrol patterns he'd memorized over weeks of observation. The first phase required reaching the Academy's main communication hub without triggering any alarms. Crix had identified the optimal timing based on security shift, changes in temporal fluctuation patterns in the station's quantum sensors. The young Vorthak's predictions proved accurate. Marcus encountered only automated systems during his approach to the communication center. The hub itself was protected by biometric locks designed to prevent unauthorized access. Marcus smiled grimly as he approached the sensors. His genetic modifications included adaptive tissue manipulation, allowing him to temporarily alter his fingerprints, retinal patterns, and even vocal cord structure to match authorized personnel, using samples collected from Commander Zexathala during their previous encounters. Marcus successfully gained access to the communication center. The room contained quantum transmitters capable of instantaneous communication across galactic distances, technology that Earth could only dream of possessing. Working quickly, Marcus began implementing a program that would simultaneously broadcast his evidence packages to every major news network, government and educational institution in the galaxy. But more importantly, he activated a virus designed to replicate across the Academy's internal systems, exposing their classified files to external oversight. The second phase required coordination with his team. Arya reached out telepathically, her consciousness touching his mind with the gentle precision her species was known for. Communication systems compromised. Beginning Phase 2. Arya was positioned near the Academy's central control room, where her telepathic abilities allowed her to monitor the thoughts and emotional states of security personnel. Her role was to provide early warning of discovered operations and, when necessary, create psychic disturbances that would confuse enemy responses. Thok had the most dangerous assignment. The Gorvani warrior was responsible for reaching the detention levels and beginning prisoner evacuation. His natural armor and combat training made him the only one capable of fighting through the Academy's security forces. But even his formidable abilities would be tested by the station's automated defenses. Through Arya's mental link, Marcus felt the moment Thok engaged the first security checkpoint. The warrior's battle fury was overwhelming even through telepathic filters, pure aggression focused with surgical precision. Energy weapons designed to stop most known species barely scratched his armored hide, while his clawed hands tore through reinforced barriers like paper. Multiple prisoners freed, came Thok's mental report through Arya's relay, security responding in force. Heavy resistance encountered. Crix was monitoring temporal probability streams from the Academy's Advanced Physics Laboratory, using the equipment there to track how their actions were affecting potential futures. His tentacled form moved in complex patterns as he calculated optimal timing for each phase of the operation. Probability flux indicates security alert in 37 time units. Crix warned through the mental link, adjusting timing recommendations for maximum success potential. Marcus finished uploading the virus and evidence packages, then began Phase 3 of his personal mission. Using his access to the communication hub, he sent a heavily encrypted message directly to Earth's hidden military command. The message was brief but crucial. Academy compromised. Human agents captured. Request immediate extraction and prepare for galactic political crisis. The response came back within seconds. Understood. Extinction protocol authorized if necessary. Protect humanity's interests above all other considerations. Extinction protocol. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Earth's leaders were prepared to sacrifice the Academy and everyone on it rather than allow their secrets to be fully exposed. He had limited time to complete the mission before his own people might become the greatest threat to innocent lives. Racing through the Academy's hidden passages, Marcus reached the detention level just as Thok was fighting his way through the final security barrier. The Gorvani warrior was wounded but still functional, his armor plates cracked but his determination unshaken. Automated defenses are adapting, Thok reported grimly. They're learning from my combat patterns. Marcus quickly assessed the situation. The Academy's security systems were indeed sophisticated, using artificial intelligence to analyze and counter specific fighting styles. But they were designed to handle known threats, not something genuinely unexpected. Cover me, Marcus ordered, then did something that violated every aspect of his cover identity. Moving faster than most species could perceive, Marcus flowed through the automated defenses like liquid mercury. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge energy beams by microseconds, while his modified neural pathways calculated trajectory patterns faster than the targeting computers could adjust. Most importantly, his movements followed no recognizable combat doctrine because they weren't based on any single species fighting style. Instead, Marcus fought like a human who had been trained to exceed human limitations. His techniques combined the fluid grace of aquatic species, the explosive power of heavy world warriors, the precision of technological enhancement, and the unpredictability that made humanity dangerous. The result was combat artistry that the Academy's system simply couldn't categorize or counter. Within minutes, the security barriers were disabled and the prisoners were free. Marcus helped the more severely injured while Thok carried those too weak to move on their own. Among the rescued was Agent Reynolds, barely conscious after months of experimentation but still alive. Marcus, Reynolds whispered through damaged vocal cords. Mission compromised. I know, Marcus replied. We're getting you out of here. Arya's telepathic warning reached them as they began evacuation. Academy-wide alert activated. All exits sealed. Security forces converging on detention levels. The Academy's response was swift and overwhelming. Automated defense systems activated throughout the station, sealing blast doors and flooding corridors with security drones. But Marcus had anticipated this response, and Crix's probability calculations had identified their optimal escape route. Emergency evacuation pods in Section 7. Crix's mental voice reached them. Probability streams show 67.3% success rate for escape if reached within 12 time units. The group moved through maintenance tunnels and service corridors, avoiding main passages where security forces were massing. Marcus carried 2 of the weaker prisoners while Thok handled 3 more, their combined strength making rapid movement possible despite the burden. They encountered resistance at the final checkpoint before the evacuation pods. Commander Zexathala herself waited with a full squad of enhanced security personnel, their weapons trained on the escape route. "I'm disappointed, Marcus," Zexathala said, her 4 eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. "You could have been a valuable asset. Instead, you've chosen to become a threat that must be eliminated." "These beings don't deserve imprisonment," Marcus replied, placing himself between the prisoners and the weapons. "What you've done here violates every principle of civilized society." "Civilization requires difficult choices," Zexathala countered. "Some individuals are too dangerous to remain free. Your species in particular represents a threat we're only beginning to understand." The standoff lasted only seconds before Marcus made his decision. In a movement that drew on every aspect of his enhancement training, he launched himself directly at the security squad. His speed caught them off guard, but their training was professional, and their equipment was designed for exactly this scenario. Energy beams crisscrossed the corridor as Marcus flowed between them, using every surface to maintain momentum while closing distance. Behind him, Thok roared a battle challenge and joined the attack, his armored form absorbing punishment that would have killed most beings. Arya struck from an unexpected direction, her telepathic abilities creating overwhelming sensory distortion in several guards simultaneously. The combination of physical assault and mental attack broke the security formation, allowing Crix to reach the evacuation pod controls. "Pods launching in 10 time units," Crix announced. "All personnel must reach launching bay immediately." The final sprint to the evacuation pods was chaos. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the station as Academy security attempted to prevent their escape. But the damage had been done. Marcus's virus had already transmitted terabytes of classified data to external recipients, and news organizations across the galaxy were beginning to report on the Academy's true nature. As their evacuation pod launched into space, Marcus watched the Academy station recede behind them. Emergency broadcasts were already reaching them. The galactic community was demanding immediate investigation of the allegations. Several governments had dispatched warships to secure the Academy and protect their imprisoned students. But Marcus knew the real battle was just beginning. Earth's secrets were exposed, the galactic balance of power was shifting, and humanity would soon face questions they weren't prepared to answer. The Academy's Deadliest student had succeeded in his mission, but the consequences were the rescue ships arrived within 6 hours, a response time that surprised even Marcus. The first to reach them was an ethereal collective vessel, its bioorganic hull pulsing with harmonious light patterns that indicated peaceful intentions. Close behind came Gorvani battlecruisers, their angular designs bristling with weapon systems activated but not targeted. As more ships arrived, Marcus realized the full scope of what his revelations had triggered. Representatives from every major species were converging on the Academy's location, and several governments had declared the institution a crime, seen under galactic law. "The Academy is being placed under emergency investigation," announced the commander of the ethereal vessel as their rescue pod was brought aboard. "All research subjects are to be transferred to neutral medical facilities for treatment and evaluation." Marcus watched through the viewing ports as Academy Station was surrounded by an international fleet. The facility that had hidden its dark secrets for decades was now under the scrutiny of the entire galaxy. More importantly, the prisoners were finally safe. Agent Reynolds was among the first evacuated to medical facilities, his condition requiring immediate attention from specialists familiar with forced enhancement procedures. Before being transferred, he managed a brief conversation with Marcus. "Command wants a full debrief," Reynolds said weakly. "Earth needs to know everything you've learned about galactic society's real power structures." "What about the extinction protocol?" Marcus asked quietly. Reynolds managed a grim smile. "Cancelled. Your evidence packages showed that the Academy was an aberration, not a universal threat. Most species were unaware of its true purpose. Earth can still maintain diplomatic relationships. Over the following days, as the galaxy grappled with the Academy scandal, Marcus found himself at the center of a political firestorm. His true identity as an enhanced human operative was now known to galactic authorities. But rather than creating hostility, it had generated intense curiosity about humanity's hidden capabilities. Your species has been remarkably modest about their achievements, observed Counselor Ethmara of the Galactic Ethics Committee during one of many interviews. The enhancement techniques demonstrated by your agents exceed anything we've seen from species with centuries more technological development. Marcus chose his words carefully. Humanity has always believed in adapting to challenges rather than avoiding them. When we learned about the complexity of galactic society, we prepared ourselves accordingly. The truth was more complex. Earth's enhancement program had been developed specifically in response to intelligence about the Academy's activities. Humanity had suspected that joining galactic society would expose them to threats beyond conventional military response, so they had created operatives like Marcus to serve as both scouts and defenders. The Academy investigation revealed the full extent of the corruption. Commander Zexathala and Dean Vorlak were arrested along with dozens of faculty members. The Galactic Defense Council underwent massive reorganization as the scope of unauthorized research programs became clear. Most importantly, hundreds of imprisoned beings were freed and received proper medical treatment. Aria visited Marcus during his recovery at a neutral medical facility. Her ethereal form, shimmering with colors he'd learned, indicated deep satisfaction. The Academy is being converted into a genuine research institution focused on ethical enhancement techniques, she reported. Many of the former prisoners have volunteered to help develop safeguards against future abuse. Thok had recovered from his injuries with typical Gorvani resilience and had been offered a position with the reformed Galactic Security Service. They need warriors who understand the difference between strength and oppression, he explained during his visit. Your example showed me that true honor comes from protecting the weak, not serving the powerful. Crix had become something of a celebrity among temporal physicists, his probability calculations during the rescue operation, having demonstrated practical applications for his species' theoretical abilities. The future streams are much brighter now, he told Marcus with satisfaction. The Academy's closure has eliminated several dark timeline branches, but the most significant changes were occurring on Earth itself. The revelation of humanity's enhancement capabilities had shifted their position in galactic politics. Species that had previously dismissed humans as primitive newcomers were now eager to establish stronger diplomatic ties. Earth has been invited to join the reformed Galactic Council, Marcus's handler informed him during a secure communication. Your mission exceeded all expectations. Not only did you gather crucial intelligence about galactic society, but you helped reform that society for the better. Marcus felt a complex mixture of pride and concern. What about the other enhanced operatives? Are their missions being revealed too? Some will maintain their cover identities, came the reply. But several are being transitioned to open diplomatic roles. The galaxy knows we have capabilities beyond our apparent technological level, but they don't know the full extent. That uncertainty works in our favor. 6 months after the Academy incident, Marcus found himself in an unexpected position. Rather than returning to Earth, he had been appointed as humanity's first enhanced cultural exchange specialist, working to help other species understand human approaches to problem-solving and adaptation. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now doing openly what he had originally been sent to do in secret, learning about galactic society while representing humanity's interests. The difference was that both sides now knew the relationship was more complex than it appeared. His office was located on Neutral Station, a facility built to replace the Academy as a center for legitimate scientific cooperation. Through his windows, Marcus could see ships from dozens of species arriving and departing, carrying researchers, diplomats, and students engaged in genuine educational exchange. Veltar had been among the first to visit the new facility, his insectoid features bright with curiosity. I always suspected you were more than you appeared, his former roommate admitted. But I never imagined your species had developed such remarkable capabilities in secret. We learned early that the galaxy could be dangerous, Marcus replied honestly. We prepared ourselves to survive and protect others who couldn't protect themselves. The Academy scandal had revealed that several species had been conducting unauthorized enhancement research, creating arms races and ethical violations across multiple sectors of galactic space. Humanity's approach, careful, controlled, and focused on protection rather than aggression, was being studied as a model for responsible development. But Marcus knew the real success of his mission lay in the relationships he had built. Arya now served as a telepathic counselor for former Academy prisoners, using her abilities to help heal trauma rather than exploit vulnerability. Thok led security teams focused on preventing abuse rather than suppressing dissent. Crix worked to identify potential threats before they could cause harm. Together, they had proven that cooperation between species could accomplish more than coercion or control. The Academy had tried to create weapons from the galaxy's brightest minds. Instead, they had forged bonds that would help shape a more ethical future for galactic civilization. As Marcus prepared his latest report for Earth, he reflected on how much had changed since his arrival at the Academy. He had been sent as a spy to assess threats to humanity. Instead, he had become a bridge between species, helping to create a galaxy where enhanced beings could use their abilities to protect rather than oppress. The Academy's finest school had indeed hidden its deadliest student. But that deadliness had been turned against injustice rather than innocence, creating a legacy that would reshape galactic society for generations to come. Marcus Chen, enhanced human operative, had become something more valuable than any weapon. He had become a teacher, showing the galaxy what humanity could offer when survival and service combined. The student had graduated, but his real education was just beginning, would reshape the entire galaxy.